Good morning, Gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM. This is John Massengale sitting in the studio, and I'm joined over Zoom by Les Kaiser. Good morning, Mr. Kaiser.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. I am ready for this. I don't know. I want 2021 to be over with, but start getting exciting at the end. Come on now.
I know 2020 has not been exciting, but I tell you what, we got a great couple of shows today because we're going to be here for the pre-race show ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix in Formula One, and we're going to have the race right here on Channel 211. And then we have our post-race show for an hour after the race, as usual. And we have some great guests today. We got some young drivers. We're going to be looking to the future, like we've done a lot on Speed City, looking at young drivers and looking ahead. We got Kyle Kirkwood going to join us in the post-race show. And if you know Kyle's background, he is really one of the most exciting young American drivers there are. So very excited to have him. We have Spike Kolbecker and Ryan Sheehan are going to join us here in the pre-race show, and two young up-and-coming drivers. Ryan is really young. He's just 15 years old and just moving from karting into F4. And, of course, Spike's been on the show before, but he's been in F4, and he's done the TRS series. So he's well on his way, and really excited to have these young drivers and talking about the future of Formula One. It's a nice way to end the season with these young drivers. But I want to look back. I'm going to start the show by looking back at the 2020 season because let's think back to March. We had Gunther Steiner on the show about a few days before they were set to start the season in Australia. And then the whole F1 circus gets to Australia and we get through Friday. We get through Thursday. I guess it was Friday. When
Yeah.
was it right before qualifying, wasn't it? I can't even remember now, but it was at the 11th
Yeah.
hour when they called it and said, we are not going to race.
Just kidding.
Yeah. And then we had no idea what was going to happen. We went literally months not knowing if we were going to get any racing. And then Formula One announced the first 10 races and then announced all the amazing new circuits for this year and announced the 17 race calendar. And we didn't know if we were maybe even going to get more than that. But the fact that they pulled it off, and we had how many? So we had Checo Perez was the first driver to test positive for COVID. And then,
Right.
of course, recently we had just had Lewis Hamilton. And that was it, right? No other drivers?
Stroll. Stroll.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Stroll. That's right. So we had 3 drivers test.
And numerous team members throughout the organizations. It was something else. But you think about the extent that they went and how much they're controlling matters. It was really good that to be quite honest, I know I pick on NASCAR and their phobia of right turns, but they handled it great. And I think that really opened up a lot of other organizations to look at how to control your racing bubble and your teams and make racing happen for 2020, to be quite honest. So I got to put the kudos where due, and that's to NASCAR on that. We all followed up well.
Yeah, I agree. I think NASCAR they were the first, and I think they did it right and got racing going again. And it was good for them, I think. I think they picked up some nice ratings during that time, and it was great for them to kick it off. So in Formula One, we got all of our 17 races, and I think it was 100 if you include today. I think I heard this on the television commentary yesterday. 161 days, 17 races, 161 days. So a pretty frenetic pace. I mean, here we are wrapping up the season with a triple header back to back to back, and it was pretty intense. Now, I love the fact that they weren't traveling as much, so it made it a little easier. But I'm just
I do
thinking,
and I don't. I would have liked to have been one of those 20 media hanging out the United States Grand Prix and the Canadian Grand Prix, but
yeah, of course,
it is what it is. And the bigger picture of it, that would have imposed a big risk to travel this far for them for Canada and the US. So
yeah. Yeah, and
Reluctantly, I'm agreeing that was the right call.
yeah, and absolutely right. We did not have a race here in Austin, and it was incredibly disappointing not to have that here in Austin. And but no doubt. I mean, in fact, I think at that time that was, Austin and Texas had been not necessarily Austin as much as Texas, but Texas was spiking really bad when they made that decision late in the summer. So it made sense to not move forward.
And
But
is it wrong that I'm already anticipating the calendar for 2021 and getting to go to Zandvoort? I mean, oh my gosh, Zandvoort was great to visit and see what they were doing there. Uh, Jan Lammer, and I'm excited to see that next year.
yeah,
I'm sorry for the guys. I'm sorry that they didn't get it this year, but I'm already anticipating, anxiously aware for what's coming in 2021 and wanting it.
I know we have so much to look forward to next year. Number one is the calendar, and hoping that the vaccine does what it needs to do, and we get 2021 in full and 23 races, which is going to be a record if we can get to all 23 races, which looks like we will. And I mean, look at all the driver situations. Now with Haas with their two young rookies, if that plays out the way, but let's be blunt, if Mazepin stays with the team after his little bit of a rough
We need
start.
to talk about that.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't.
let's finish up this discussion, but
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to talk about that for sure. I mean, it was really ridiculous what happened. I mean, we do have to remember these guys are kids, but they can't be kids. They're Formula One drivers. So,
exactly right.
but just thinking through what we've got to look forward to, we got the 23 races. We got lots of new drivers. Of course, you got starting with Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel leaving and Carlos Sainz moving in there. And you think about we got the two Haas drivers leaving and the two young Haas drivers coming in. You've got Sebastian Vettel moving to the new Aston Martin team. You've got I mean, there's so much to look forward to from that standpoint. Plus, we've got some new rules to look at, and there's lots of, it's not the sea change that we're going to get in 2022, but we have lots of rules to look at next year and we have the beginning of the budget cap to start making the sport more competitive across the board. We had the beginning of one of the most interesting things to me about those rule changes next year, Les, is the aerodynamic limitations, the CFD computational fluid dynamics limitations that they put on the teams based on the order that they finished the season before. Which, I mean, that kind of reminds me of American NFL, like the draft, how if you win the Super Bowl, you draft last. It's not, not driver focused, like player focused like the NFL, but how CFD is so important. And so
Well, that would really turn this sport upside down if you went that far as to say the driver is picked for the next year. But that's not going to happen.
well, but think about it though. Think about our sport versus NFL, let's say, just use it as an example. In the NFL, the players are so much more. I mean, you can't say that, in our sport, you saw, we took George Russell and put him in Lewis Hamilton's car, and he was about to win the race, right? Well, you can't say that you take the best, Patrick Mahomes, let's say, in the NFL, let's say he's the best quarterback in the NFL right now, for sake of argument. You can't just, it's just not the same. You can't take and plug and play and say that that it's going to make as much difference, because our sport is made up of so much more of technology and athletes, right? So limiting the CFD, having great aerodynamics such a great influencer in the ability to win races and perform in Formula One. So I think that it doesn't equate to the athlete, but it absolutely equates to the ability to do well.
Absolutely. I joke about swapping drivers, but after last week, and we'll talk George Russell specifically, but after last week, There's been a lot of news on, or I'll say a lot of commentary on the internet about how good is George, how good really is Hamilton. And we asked that last week as well. By all means, Hamilton is a rock star. He deserves every bit of it. He's demonstrated it consistently, how great he is. But you cannot discount that he's got a fantastic car. And then how much did George Russell bring to that? Great race last week. Toto has actually given Scott Russell, very high regards in saying, watch this guy for next year. Yes, he was put in Lewis's car, but if we can get to the point, and I have to say also give Lewis credit for refining that car and working with the engineers to getting it to that point. So we had a lot of things that swizzle around the change and makeup of George Russell winding up in Lewis's car. And what if we threw Lewis in George's car? So have to put on booster seat and platform shoes for Lewis, but I think it'd be great.
Well, it has been we got a lot to look forward to next year, but it's been really an amazing season. Think back looking at the races that we've been able to add, Imola and Nürburgring and Portimao. I mean, it's just been Mugello. It's been really amazing. And we've seen, we saw Pierre Gasly win the race at Monza. We saw Sergio Perez win last week, and we've seen some, and of course we just saw Max Verstappen yesterday get pole, which is his first pole of the season. It always surprises me how few poles he's had. This is only his third pole, and you think of Max as being one of the best drivers in the last few years. You could argue Max is as good or better than Hamilton. At times he's really just been amazing. He hasn't been as consistent, of course. But so anyway, there's just been so much in this year, considering that we weren't even sure we were going to get a year. We had no idea what it was going to look like. I remember when those first 10 races got announced, it was like, wow, how many of these are we even going to get? Are we going to get one or two races in and then have a meltdown with COVID and not be able to finish the season at all? But leave it to Formula One though, Les. I mean, we know the degree of Formula One, that the nth degree that they take everything, and this season was a great example of the fact that there were some other cases that were reported other than the three drivers throughout the season, but it was maintained. They had their bubbles and it never got out of control, and they were able to do Formula One level on everything that they needed to do to keep that under control.
Yeah, you're right. And, don't, by all means, they listen to they brought in experts and they listened to the experts to execute on that. They didn't let the finances of racing direct how they were going to address it and control it. So kudos.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we are very excited because we are looking to the future. We have three young drivers on the show today. We have Kyle Kirkwood, Spike Colbecker, and Ryan Sheehan, all drivers that have been that have started now. Kirkwood, of course, just dominated in the U.S. F3 and F4 and then Spike has done fantastic in F4, and Ryan Sheehan, who's about to join us, has just started to step up to F4. So let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, we do have one of those young drivers on the line is going to join us. We got Ryan Sheehan's going to join us. So stay tuned, and we'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Welcome back to the show. I love the fact that we have Gene Haas bringing us back, Les, because we got these.
Yeah, newsworthy week for Gene Haas.
Yeah. Good, both good and bad.
Absolutely.
I love it because we have these young drivers joining us today. And wouldn't they like to be talking to Gene Haas about their future? But all right, we want to welcome to the show our first young driver guest of the day, a young gentleman that I met here in Austin, Texas. And I was very excited to have a young driver coming up through a very formula-centric path to his racing career through karting, and now about to step into F4. We got Ryan Sheehan. Welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great, and we're really excited to have you. We are getting ready for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the season finale in Formula One, and we have a great interview later in the show, actually in the post-race show, with a driver who's going to be racing today, Pietro Fittipaldi. And so we're not only have you three young American drivers, but we've got the newest driver on the Formula One grid right now, sitting in for Roman Grosjean. But Ryan, we want to talk about your career today, and why don't you tell us how you first got excited about becoming a race driver?
Well, my parents took me out to COTA for an IMSA race in 2013, and from there I just fell in love. Went to 4 races, and about a year later, started to do some research on how to get started, and found a kart track nearby. Went to watch a race, and just all started from there.
Yeah, well,
I'm betting that was the track down. I think it's Hill Country down in New Braunfels. If I'm guessing,
yes,
is that where you went?
Yes, it was.
Absolutely. And folks, look for tracks like that. This is a great little track, kind of about a little ways between Austin and San Antonio, Texas. Not far, truly less than an hour from the Circuit of the Americas. Look for those tracks in your community. They are out there. Great place, just like Ryan's saying, to go take a look, get your appetite built up on it. So what'd you see there that really got you interested?
Just great racing, stacked fields really in a lot of the classes, especially in the cadet class where I was going to enter. And we met some other families, and after that we just knew that we had to get started.
And these were what, 125 shifter karts?
You can get up there, but what I'm running is a 125 single gear centrifugal clutch.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Touching good.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, so when you started this, what did you think? Did you think that you were going to move towards a full-blown race career? How did that evolution of thinking about this as an actual career?
Well, I always hoped that it would move into a career. So I just kind of kept pushing, left normal school in hopes of pursuing it as a career. But it really became real maybe 2 years ago when we started to really push attending national level events. And then we joined a new team who have a ladder program to formula cars. So I think that was a big step for making it a reality.
Well, so talk about the team that you're with now, and then kind of lead into the big news about being invited to step up to F4.
Yeah. So the team is CrossFit Competition. They run karting, Formula 4 US, and the Formula Regional US series. So started out in karting with them in January of 2019 because we heard that they had the ladder program. So the hope was always to move up through the ladder as I got better. And that finally started, getting to move up from karting to Formula 4 next year with them.
Yeah, that's a fantastic program that is now, it still feels brand new to me, but, we have the USF4 and then the Formula Regionals, which is the F3 series. And it's a nice, clear pathway to move into open wheel racing, whether that's, the ultimate path to Formula One or to IndyCar. And that's what attracted you to that. But look, you got to be totally excited because they invited you to step up to an F4 car. I mean, but tell them about, I heard your dad tell the story about you taking the F4 car out for a test and just wowing the guys with your lap times.
Sorry about that. I had connection issues.
That's all right. But yeah, tell us about your lap times that when you went to test in the F4 car.
So the first test we put down pretty decent, pretty average, with pretty terrible tires. But I think what really impressed them was the scent test last weekend, where we did some pretty good lap times on some not great tires. So I think that really pushed them into wanting to get racing, because the plan was originally just to test next year, still doing karting. But I think seeing that we have the potential to do well, they want to do a full season in the Formula 4.
Well, I think you're being a little bit humble too, because from what I understand, the coaches were watching, going, "Oh, we'll see how he does." And then every lap got a little faster, and somebody said something like, "Well, if he gets down into the 112s, there's no way, not with those tires." And then you jump down into the 112s, so I'm pretty excited to have a young gentleman from Austin doing so well and headed towards, a career in racing. So let's talk about that. Is your goal, is it as high as it gets? Is it Formula One? Is it to become a professional driver? What is your ultimate goal?
I think the first goal is definitely just to make a living out of it, to be a professional. I think wherever I end up, I'll be happy, but obviously the goal is always Formula One.
Awesome. I can imagine that's what every young race driver is, the ultimate goal. So, well, hey, I got to ask you this. You're only 15-year-olds. That's right. And 15, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Well, how, I know your dad's involved in stuff a little bit, but tell us about what that's like as a 15-year-old. You're trying to go to high school, but how is that, and how much is your family involved?
Oh, they're super involved. They support me 100%. My dad with managing pretty much everything. My mom helping with diet, school. But without them, it wouldn't be possible. They support me in every way.
It takes that. A lot of folks don't realize that you don't just step into it and you're suddenly somebody and there's money come flowing in. The entire family makes sacrifices and support, and that absolutely is a big part of it. And then, we invite community members as far as businesses, companies that want to help foster, an American get onto the grids, whether it's a Formula 4, Formula R, et cetera. It's really coming in, and there's some pretty big news about some other Americans stepping in. We'll also get to that later on in the show. But what do you need right now to keep on going? You've got a great name behind you with this team coming up. What are things that are going to help you maintain and stay on grid from the community or even from yourself?
Definitely some sponsors, some partners to work with to help get me on track. But I think just need to keep on working hard, can't stop working now that, I have a opportunity to drive next year. Just keep on doing what I'm doing and keep on training, keep on testing, just to hopefully do well next year.
Yeah, wheel time behind the wheel. I know that's the big thing. And yeah, I mean, you're like every young race driver we've ever had on the show, Ryan, looking for sponsors. I mean, Les, I know you'll remember every time we had Connor Daly on for the first few years, starting back in 2012. I mean, he would stop and do a full-blown commercial for himself and begging for sponsors. So it's just the nature of the sport. You got to get sponsors behind you. And, it's such a great way for a company to get involved with a young driver is, they can get their product associated with a sexy sport like auto racing. So it's fantastic. But hey,
Ryan needs to get to Bronxville's area and this area of Texas around that track are beautiful destinations right on the edge of the hill country, little roads slightly west. I think you local tourist bureau teams get behind me. Come on.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Might not be a bad idea.
Hey, Ryan, we just have a couple minutes left. I want to ask you about Formula One. Are you do you watch every race and keep up with the sport?
Every race, every qualifying, every race.
Ha. Well, who's your favorite driver or team? Who do you get excited about watching?
I think I'd have to go with Lando and McLaren. The combo.
How did I know you were going to say that? Lando is such a fantastic breath of fresh air for the sport. He does so well on social media, and we've gotten to interview him a couple times out here at COTA, and we've had a blast talking to him. And I really think that his openness and do you, by the way, do you follow him on anything like Twitch or any of all those platforms where he gets out there?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what sets apart from others. I think that's probably why he's my favorite.
All right. Well, Ryan Sheehan, we are out of time. Thank you so much. The best of luck with your career. We're going to be following you and wishing you the best of luck, and we'll get you back on the show sometime soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. All right, everybody. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our young driver interviews as we get ready for the Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and we'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
We're going to talk a lot about Max Verstappen here in a few minutes because he is on pole, third time in his career. Fantastic to see qualifying with someone other than Mercedes at the front of the grid. And we are about a half hour away from the Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. You can hear right here on Sirius XM. But we have another young American race driver on the phone. We've been talking about Spike Kohlbecker. He's been on the show before. Spike, welcome back to Speed City.
Hey guys, how are you doing this morning?
We're doing good. How about you?
Great, buddy.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's my birthday today, and I'm just turning 18, so I'm here up and early with you guys, and I'm excited to watch the race later on.
Awesome. Well, happy birthday. 18 years old. Wow, that's awesome.
Oh, man. All the best guys are born in December.
Older.
That's right. I saw that. In fact, Jonathan had told me that you had a birthday this weekend. I really didn't look. I didn't know exactly, but then I realized this morning it was today and 18th. So that's awesome. Happy birthday. What are you going to do for your birthday?
You know, I think I'm going to spend some time with the family. I think they might have a surprise birthday party for me planned, kind of COVID spaced out, and we'll see what happens later on.
Hey, birthday cake for breakfast, I always say.
yeah, that would be pretty fun.
Well, that's a bummer. I didn't even think about it from that standpoint, having a COVID birthday on your 18th, but that's what we all have to deal with this year. But well, Spike, let's talk about your career a little bit. And you know, you've done really amazing. I look at your resume, and for an 18-year-old, you've got so much on there. You've got starting way back in 14, Porsche Club of St. Louis, Lucas Oil Formula Race at NOLA, and Lucas Oil School of Racing again in 17, Bondurant, F1600 in Canada, and then, of course, the New Zealand 1600, the Toyota Racing Series. And this year, I'm already calling it last year, this year, third place in the USF4. That's an amazing accomplishment, and congratulations on that, Spike.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, the USF4 championship was pretty good this year. We did just all right. We stuck in that last weekend. We came in fourth at the beginning of the weekend and battled it out with one of my teammates, and we ended up getting that third place, which was amazing. And that's what my goal was for that weekend, and we accomplished that, and I was very happy with that.
And you know, I rattled off a lot of your car racing, but you've done a bunch of karting too, including this year too, right?
Yeah, I've been laying off the karting this year, but before cars, I did around 10 to 11 years of karting for Margay, and they're local here in St. Louis, Missouri, where I live. So I'm very close with them still to this day, and I still talk to them. And I actually went this year and raced a go-kart at Autobahn with some friends, and they helped me out with that. And it's always great getting back in a go-kart every once in a while.
You know what, Spike, I want to give out the phone number because, you know, we might have some young people or family, dads or whatever, moms listening that might want to ask a question, but it's 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-LIVE. And I want to, if anybody wants to call and ask you, but why don't you talk about, you know, we just had Ryan Sheehan. I think you know Ryan, but we asked him how he got started. And he lives here in Austin. He went out to an IMSA race and got the bug. How did you get excited about car racing?
You know, I was just a little kid. I was around, I had just turned 4 years old, and Christmas came around this time of year, you know, whatever it was, 13, 14 years back. And my grandpa was a car collector, and he also raced and built his go-karts when he was younger in parking lots when the grocery stores were closed on Sundays. So he bought me a go-kart when I was 4, and I raced locally here in Peabody, Missouri for about 2 years, and then branched my way out to Springfield, Missouri, and then raced regionally and then raced nationally when I got better.
Awesome. And I asked Ryan the same question. So, what's the dream for your career?
The dream for my career is to continue racing. That's what I love to do. I'm open to any platform of car and types of racing. I've always loved the car and learning new tracks. I think this year we also learned a bunch of new tracks because I'd never raced in the U.S. Really in a championship. So our plan was to go around the world and travel to as many places as we could and learn as quickly as possible. And that's what we did this year.
Well, what about these tracks? What's your favorite track that you've raced on now in Formula 4?
My favorite track would have to be Coda and Barber. Barber is fun. The two places I won are they're linked up.
Well, what about, you said you chose Coda first. Why Coda? What makes that your favorite track?
It's a very long track with super tight bits and super long flowing bits. And it separates the good drivers from the bad, and the ones that want to go deeper in the braking zone are very much rewarded. And same for getting back on power early in the turn as well. So, you get to some of those bigger tracks and the field kind of separates out a little bit because track's longer, there's more places to make air and more places to gain time. So I think that's where we really shined this year, and we were doing pretty good there. And I also had 17 fans and supporters that we kind of snuck in as mechanics on the team. So they all came and watched. So it was amazing to win in front of them and to put on a show, which was also a little bit of motivation as well.
Mike, being that you've traveled around the world, it's often said that Circuit of the Americas has some pieces that were taken from others. Maggott Beckett, for instance, specifically comes to mind. Have you been to that track, and do you recognize the similarity as it exists at Coda?
Are you talking about the similarity on like a sim between Coda and real life Coda?
Sure. As well, I was going to ask about Maggots Beckett is the portion, the Turn 3 series, 3 to 9 series. I didn't know if you'd been to Maggots Beckett.
Yeah, that section of the track is fairly accurate in the sim racing. It always feels different in the car, and a sim only tells you so much. But I used the sim to learn, and I did quite a few laps in the Pro 2000 and the USF car and the F3 car on iRacing, and that was that was pretty much the most important part of the track to start you out with. And I think that because you also have that really long 3/4 mile straightaway that you want to break the toe for, so that's why I think it's super important that part.
I was out there yesterday, big private event going on, and it was amazing, but to see the variety of cars that were in this group out there and the way they each handle it, like I said, to be able to see all these different cars lined up. We actually had Martin Brundle's, I think it was 93 Tyrrell F1 car sitting out there, as well as a lot of modern ones. And the way they each take it, the downforce, not. But you're right, those S's, and you mentioned braking hard late is where you really gain a lot of time. And that's where we would really see the gaps change amongst those running groups. It was really, really interesting to see all that play out exactly as you described.
Right, and I'm super excited because, like I said, I just turned 18, so I can join the PCA membership and just go around and do track events, not only at Coda, but anywhere in the U.S. that has an event. So I'm super excited, looking forward to driving some of the tracks I've driven in an F4 car in a regular street car.
I see one reason why you like Circuit of the Americas so much, because you won a race at Circuit of the Americas. That'll be stuck in your memory for the rest of your life, winning a race there.
Yeah, I got photos in my room, and it was a good weekend.
And you keep one in your wallet to show the girls also?
Yeah, don't forget that phone.
Sometimes when they come over here, I go upstairs and I may grab a few photos to bring down and show them.
Oh, well, so what about next year, Spike? What's the plan?
We're still evaluating all our options. We have lots of stuff in the works, but we're still looking at our options for next year. And I hope that the next time I'm on with you guys, which is hopefully soon, I can officially talk about that.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to get your. I know you're an F1 fan. I think we've talked about that before, but I can't remember who's your team, who's your driver.
I was looking for Ricardo to do a little bit better in qualifying, but I really think I'm interested to see how Lando Norris is going to do. I watched the highlights that F1 had posted on YouTube, and I also watched bits and portions of the Q3 on the recording, and he was way up there, and some of the other Red Bull drivers as well.
Well, are you a fan of a fan of a particular driver or team that you like to watch?
I think today I'm going to go for Norris. He's got it all lined up for him. Let's see how he can put it together.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. Ryan Sheehan said the same thing. He likes to watch Lando Norris, but we are looking forward to it. Well, Spike, thanks for joining us this morning, and we are going to keep an eye on you to see what happens for next year, and we'll get you back on the show to talk about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, I often commentate the PCA stuff, so if you get back to Coda, stop by the microphone, come say hey.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. I'll have to look at the events. I think I'll start out locally at Gateway here in near my house. It's over in Illinois. IndyCar runs there as well, so I'm gonna enjoy it. Enjoy being 18, and hopefully I have a few presents today.
Well, Spike Colbecker, thank you for coming on. Happy birthday, and good luck with the racing career, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, guys, thank you for having me on the show.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Happy birthday, buddy.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take our last break of the show, and then we'll take you straight up to the start of the Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. You're listening to Speed City live from Austin, back after these messages.
I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right, welcome back. We're about 20 minutes away from the Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and final race of the season under the lights at Yas Marina Circuit. Looking forward to seeing this. Max Verstappen on pole. Sebastian Vettel's final race for Ferrari. He starts way down in 13th. Kevin Magnussen lines up on the grid for the final time in Formula One. And we've got a lot to watch for today, Les. You know, we've got Pietro Fittipaldi in the Haas car and George Russell back in the Williams car. So there's plenty to watch for today. What are you looking forward to, Les?
Oh, I definitely Pietro. I want to see him do well and perform well. For one, Haas needs it. Two, he hasn't had that great of opportunity to get in on track in recent history. Leading up until last weekend. And so absolutely, Pietro, I want to see him out there. One of the highlights this week, Mercedes said something overnight that they've dialed back performance a little bit to manage their MBUK. And so they may not be running it up to 11 anymore and party mode. And so, they're saying that was an impact on their qualifying. And so I can't imagine that, maybe they will. Maybe they'll go ahead and let it run up to 11 during the final race, let Hamilton anyway. And so that's going to be interesting to see them dialed back a little bit. Quite honestly, knowing that Sebastian Vettel, what we've seen of him, I'm kind of curious to see what he does during this last race, whether he really gives it just a gung-ho run for it, or he just kind of does a Sunday morning drive and wrap up his race season.
I had higher hopes after he's been at least a half second, it seems like, almost all season behind Charles Leclerc, and recently he was he was closer to Charles, but he was 7/10 behind him in qualifying, and so he's just, I don't know. I can't figure out what's going on with Sebastian Vettel, whether it's a mental thing or whatever. I'm assuming they've got the same hardware. What was that?
We've been saying mental thing with Sebastian for 2 seasons now. I really think it is. And the reason I say that, I don't feel like he's leaning forward. I don't feel like he's going after this. I kind of feel like he's in a more relaxed state. He's not out there to challenge and really drive hard. He's a professional driver, yes, and that still is in there somewhere, but I can't say I see him really pushing and against much of anybody, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I agree with you. But well, let me run down the qualifying and the starting grid. So Max Verstappen on pole with a 135.246, and right behind him was Valtteri Bottas with a 135.271. So really, look at these lap times, how close they are. So Lewis Hamilton in third, 135.332. And Lando Norris in fourth, looking good. Lando with a 135.496. So the fact that Bottas out-qualified Lewis Hamilton, I'm going to – Hamilton had to have been affected being right back into the car after having COVID because, he was not asymptomatic, Les. He had some symptoms and talked about some of those. And so he was, I would say he's probably not 100%.
Yeah, in fact, it came out overnight. Someone reported that he was still feeling heavy-chested, if you will, and that was likely going to come into play through the duration of the race. He might feel good starting off. He probably had a little bit of a nap or something on, but as far as endurance, that it's most likely going to impact him at some level through the race. Dragging his way back a little ways, but who knows? We've seen Hamilton be Superman and blast through other things, and so it'll be interesting to watch him.
I know. It's like, okay, if you were a betting man and you were gonna, it's still hard to bet against Lewis Hamilton, and what will be exciting, we always talk about it's great when Max Verstappen is up there close to Hamilton and Bottas to give us a nice battle, but now we're going to have Lewis Hamilton coming from behind Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas for that matter. And So that ought to be interesting to watch. So we said Lando Norris was in fourth. Alexander Albon, speaking of Red Bull, maybe he can get up there and help his teammate play a role in trying to get a win for Max Verstappen. So Albon in fifth, Carlos Sainz in sixth, Daniel Kvyat, who could also be seeing his last race in Formula One. We don't have a contract for him yet either. Lance Stroll in the Racing Point in eighth place, and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari in ninth. Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri in 10th, Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel in 13th, Antonio Giovinazzi, who outqualified Kimi Räikkönen, and he won the battle. He actually outqualified him for the season. I think it was 9-8. And then Sergio Perez with a penalty down in 15th. And Kimi Räikkönen, Kevin Magnussen, George Russell, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Nicholas Latifi. So just going back up to think about how some of this plays out, I touched on the fact that Albon will have, hopefully, a role to play in Max Verstappen, trying to help him win the race. What do you think about those two guys, about Albon trying to help out Verstappen, Les?
Albon, good man. You know, we've seen him all season. I want to see him, quite honestly. I mean, part of it is just personal. I like his personality in the paddock. I like the way he deals with his fans. I want to see him up there with Max. I think he's a good second driver to Max. Kind of understands his place. He can play a supporting role and he can deliver. But Ocon Gasly is not to be forgotten. So, but I'm still cheering for Alexander.
Yeah, I know you like him, and we met him here in Austin, and he is a nice young man, and you got to root for him a little bit. But man, it's he's got to. I still think he's just got to step up his game to, and we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where that all this is going to end up. But I'm just looking down. Lance Stroll, Daniel Kvyat, and Lance Stroll in 7th and 8th. And Lance starting in 8th. I'm looking at his lap time. So his Q3 best time was 1:36.065. And I'm just looking all the way through. So a little over a second off of the fastest pace there from Max Verstappen. But you talked about Gasly too. Leclerc in 9th and Gasly in 10th. He's had a really fantastic year thinking about it. And really, Leclerc it's been interesting to see him, last year when he had that powertrain in the Ferrari, the controversial now powertrain, and looked so fantastic. It's always good to see a driver with a little bit of adversity. And I like the way that Charles Leclerc has responded. He's humble. He's come out and said when he's made a mistake. And it's been interesting to see him in this position. But if they really do have the same hardware, it's just astounding how much faster he's been than Sebastian Vettel all season. And I look forward to seeing what he can do today.
We always say that, but there's a lot to do with the drivers setting up and being able to communicate to the engineering teams and the rest of the team to set up their car right. I honestly don't know if Ferrari's had any personality changes around the technical aspect that Sebastian's just not connecting with. It could be something like that, to be quite honest. And then you just get, just disconnected from your car. You just don't feel good about it. I don't recall any of that happening, but you can't discount that kind of thing. Going through some empty seats right quick, Scuderia Alpha Honda still has an empty spot next to Pierre Gasly, if I recall correctly. Mercedes still waiting on Lewis to autograph the document. They're pushing through things. And Red Bull next to Max has that spot. I don't believe that's confirmed either. And so this is interesting. Here we are at the last race, and we've got some question marks out there.
Hey, I got to ask you something, Les. Did you hear the team radio from Toto Wolff talking to Valtteri Bottas?
I did not hear it firsthand, but as I heard, that was it was more kind of a personal friendship message and things like that. What was your take on it?
Well, and I have read all that, but when I first heard it, I was like, wait a minute, you just don't hear Toto Wolff on the radio, and he said, all you have, Valtteri, in his final lap, and he was like his final couple of runs actually, and I was like, wow, is that what you try to think, your mind races is like what to make of this, right? But I think it did come out that it was really just a friendship thing, and Toto Wolff came out and said, he said, the last days we've had a chat about different things. We're a team and support each other. If you feel like we can support another person on the team and encouragement with the words, you do it. He said, I would do the same for any team member. So nothing more than that. I think it's more of a personal thing. In other words, it wasn't, you better do this, or, because he has not had a great run of it lately. I mean, it's hard to get to say that it was all Valtteri Bottas' fault last weekend. Obviously, when the pit stop debacle for Mercedes, which we really haven't talked about that. We'll touch on that here in a second, because it turns out they were saying it was a radio issue, and just I swear, feeding the flames for the black helicopter crew, but. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that we hadn't talked about it, but the fact that Toto Wolff was talking to Valtteri on the radio and just doesn't do that. So I guess I'll take him at his word on that. But yeah, Les, we didn't get to talk about it because we didn't know when we came on the air after the race last week exactly what had happened. And, the fact that the Mercedes pit put Valtteri Bottas tires on George Russell's car. But they said it was a radio transmission where they did not hear the call because it was a last minute yellow flag, throw the tires on, and they said the radio transmission. In fact, what they were saying, I thought this was really interesting, and they said that there were other radio transmissions going on at the exact same moment, and the software or the technology that they use didn't prioritize it correctly. Did you hear about that?
I had not. That's interesting. What I find interesting is that they had the opportunity to grab the wrong tire intake. I'd like, somebody's looking back into that, because as we've got to tour the garages here, those types of things are very clearly delineated between which ones are for one driver, which ones are for the other, specifically to address that kind of thing. And also, the tires are locked in sets specifically. This is the set that's going on. You can't say, oh, that front left is better than this front left, and swap. And so I suspect there was more to it than just radio breakup, as we heard.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to William Ricker. He's been really active with us on Twitter lately. He says, it's hard to believe this is my last pot of coffee with Speedcaster. That's our Twitter handle for 2020. And thanks for the company. Yeah. Thanks, William. Thanks for tuning in for lots of the races. We really appreciate it. And, of course, we got one more post-race show following the race. But you know what, William? You can also catch us. We are on year-round on Sunday night on the radio in Austin. You can go to our website, speedcitybroadcast.com, to catch us. We do some interesting stuff in the off-season. We try to touch on some of the business of motorsport and things like that. And what a fantastic segue. Thank you, myself. Les, what about the story that broke yesterday about another U.S. investment firm? Really, I think it's basically an investment banking firm, but they specialize in sports, but buying into McLaren, and I think they're going to step in with a certain percentage with the view to owning almost a third of the team.
Sure. Let me throw out some numbers there. And you're right. Big major investor. This is an American-owned investment. Basically, it was reported on Saturday McLaren's entering a partnership with consortium-led sports investment group MSP Sport Capital. It's a big deal. MSP will acquire 15% stake in McLaren initially, increasing its shareholding to the maximum of 33% by the end of 2022. Think of that, 33% ownership of McLaren. Now, McLaren has been gaining a lot of American interest because the the McLaren street car group has moved to an area near Dallas, Texas, presumably, possibly to be near the Circuit of the Americas. But that is a big thing. Formula One is definitely gravitating, getting more information. We've heard of another American groups investing. It's a big deal. If you're a decision maker in a corporation or investment, you've got to be considering Formula One related entities in your portfolio.
This is really fascinating because think about this. First of all, let me read a little bit. I found this story on motorsport.com, and apparently this broke on Sky Sports yesterday, but the McLaren group has faced financial troubles this year as a result of the pandemic, right? And so MSP Sports Capital, like you said, they lead a targeted fund and invest in sports-related properties that it believes have long-term potentials. Key figures from MSP have experience as owners and investors in the National Football League, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, ESPN, and other sports management company. So this is really, really exciting. And I mean, think about it, Les. So we have Liberty Media, an American company that owns the sport. You've got Williams, who just did essentially the same thing, except 100% of the team into an American investment firm. And now McLaren, is this becoming an American sport? We still think of this as a British and European and worldwide sport, but man, with all of this, it's really amazing how much American involvement.
I liken it to growing up playing soccer and having to watch the German and the Spanish speaking and the British broadcast to watch legitimate soccer or professional soccer. You could say the same about Formula One. It took us a while to lead in. I think we're in that transition where more American fans, more American businesses are considering Formula One a sport that we can be involved in. And it's not something the rest of the world does. And so now we're part of it. I really appreciate that. I get the opportunity. I was with some of the Ferrari club last night, and it's interesting that, certainly when you speak to somebody around the Ferrari brand, they absolutely know what Formula One is. As we start getting into other brands, the Corvettes, we speak to the Corvette crowd when we're with those folks. It's IMSA, it is, GT Le Mans discussions, things of that nature. But even those are beginning to discuss Formula One more and more. And I think it's important that we recognize that and we see it happening. It's good not only for the sake of the sport, but from a business standpoint, as we see here, investors across the United States are looking at Formula One as an opportunity, and they're recognizing it as a global entity.
Yeah. Well, when this broke yesterday, it was not official, but it is official now. And I'm looking at on ESPN, MSP Sports Capital acquires minority stake in McLaren. It's exactly what we had heard. It was 15% that will initially, and will rise to 33% by the end of 2022, and it'll value McLaren at $740 million. It said so. And under the deal, they'll put in 185 million pounds into McLaren Racing over this 2-year period. And this consortium includes a couple different companies, Najafi and UBS O'Connor, which is a subsidiary of the Swiss investment banking firm UBS, which we've all heard of. And so they'll have some members join the board. So this is really, really interesting that we've got continuing American involvement in the sport. But all right, well, speaking of Formula One, we are now just about to hand over the microphones to the team over at the BBC to take over the play-by-play. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, but don't forget, we're going to have our 1-hour post show. But before we go, let's make a quick call. Who are you going to take for the win today in podium?
Oh boy, win. Let's go with Max. I want Lando on the podium. They'll probably be one of the two Mercedes, whichever one doesn't blow their MBK before the end of the day.
You know what? I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Max and Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris. That would be awesome. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank our guests, Ryan Sheehan and Spike Kohlbecker, those young American drivers. But stay tuned after the race, and we will have our 1 hour post show. Talk to you then.
Oh.